Well, I'm back working on the 92 Corvette, and it'll run. The other day it ran for about 10 minutes, died, couldn't get it started. Had to have it towed home, sitting in a bad place on the side of the road against a guardrail. So I waited, I tried to start it several times, couldn't start it. Came out the next day after watching a bunch of videos, and I thought, oh, I know my problem. I'm out of gas and my gas gauge is broken. So, without trying to start it, which was a mistake, I added 5 gallons of gas and it started right up. And I thought, voila, problem solved. Drove it down the street in my neighborhood for 5 minutes and it died. Wouldn't start again. Took out the fuel pump, tested it, it pumped. I just didn't want to mess with anything else at the time. It was getting hot. So I put it back together, waited till the next day, and came back, started right up. I drove it home. And I've been busy the last few days, haven't had a chance to do anything. So today I went to Harbor Freight. Let me show you what I bought real quick. Fuel pressure gauge. The one they have for $25. Hang on a second before that blows away. The one they have for $25 does not fit GM. So I bought this one that's like $70 or $80 and I had a 20% coupon. It's got all kinds of different adapters and a couple pieces of hose and clamps, Schrader valves. It even has a connector you can hook in line, so in case you don't have a Schrader valve. And some of the guys, okay, now I'm on the driver's side, and some of the guys said there was a Schrader valve like right here, not. So I went and looked at the fuel rail system. And I'm not a mechanic, I just like to tinker with stuff and not pay a mechanic $100 an hour to experiment. Anyway, I looked around the fuel rails here, and since this is the baffle they say that regulates your fuel pressure so it doesn't get spikes, I figured this is the inlet. So I disconnected it. I was gonna take it off, but then I said, well, I'll follow it around. So it goes into this rail, comes back out here. This one goes into this fuel rail, comes back out here, and this goes back to the gas tank. So the fuel you don't use has someplace to go, which is the gas tank. Well, I was looking around and I saw the Schrader valve right there. So not quite halfway between the front and the back. It's actually right next to those two fuel injectors. And I took the connector that they gave me. I didn't have to change anything. Hooked it up. This tube here, for you guys like me that don't know what you're doing, is to release the pressure so the gas has someplace to go. So I guess you can just dump it down on the ground, or in my case I'll get a can or bucket or something, let it shoot into there if there's very much pressure. But long story short, what I did was I hooked up the fuel pressure gauge and I cycled the engine. I didn't turn it on, I just turned the key on, and it built up almost exactly like 39 and a half, 40 pounds of pressure. Now I watched a Chris Fix video. I like his videos. For a young guy, he knows a lot. And he said just leave it sit on there for a while, a couple minutes, see what it looks like. Because if you have a bad leak, like if this thing's leaking, you'll smell gas here. If your fuel injectors are leaking, it'll take quite a while to let the pressure go off. But if you have a bad valve in your gas fuel pump, it'll probably just go down right away. So mine's been like 5 minutes maybe, and it's hanging right in there at 39 and a half. So before I mess with the car anymore, I'm going to let it sit on there for at least 30 minutes and see if it moves. If it doesn't move, then I'll figure I have a sealed system. So I need to go to the next step. And the next step is going to be to start it and see what my fuel pressure is and see how it maintains while it's pumping and when I rev it up. And since the problem is it shuts off after 5 minutes, 10 minutes max, I'm going to let it sit here and idle till it warms up, and it'll start missing and bucking like crazy. almost like it's out of gas. And then I'm going to check the fuel pressure at that point, because if the fuel pressure dies after it warms up and shuts off, then I'll figure the fuel pump's getting warm and shorting out. If that's not the problem, then I'm going to go to spark. And I guess on these, you have a distributor down here. Where's it at? Someplace down there. You got an ignition coil and an ignition module, which is like right there. So I'll start heading that direction if it's not the fuel pump. But at this point, it's not fuel pressure, but we'll have to wait and see what happens after it warms up. I will probably just pause this and then come back to it after a while. Hopefully, otherwise I guess there'll be a part 2. Have a good one.